Baseball. It's our national pastime. For many, the sport loved by generations past and present is part of its daily fabric. We are drawn into the people, sights, pictures, videos, and the atmosphere baseball provides us. Every day, from the blossoms of spring to the dog days of summer to its annual rites in autumn, the sport is there to distract us from our troubles in our daily lives. But every year, the sport, along with the sun, says good night and see you in the morning. Entrenched in our midst was months of grueling winter, with the snow, the wind, and the chill of midwinter. Baseball parks as we know it look abandoned. Grass is not green. Fans are not in their seats. There is nobody to ingrain the sport's spirit for us. Many work at the ballparks during these days of winter just so they can put the atmosphere in place for baseball to thrive in spring, summer, and fall. And as the winter gets deeper, there seems to be no hope. But as of this Thursday, the wait is over. The green grass grows once again. Fans flock to the ballparks in the millions. Players are coming home with jerseys, cleats, belts, caps, bats, and gloves. Baseball once again greets us good morning. The sport is experiencing as much optimism as it has seen in a long time. Teams are beginning to see their long-awaited pieces of their puzzles come up through the ranks and onto the national stage. 2018 is no different. 6 teams have new managers. More than a dozen have made high-impact moves to improve their teams outside the organization. 10 teams are looking for successive trips to the playoffs. The other 20 look to end playoff droughts, big or small. One is coming off their first title in franchise history. The other 29 teams believe they can unseat that. It's a season for all of us. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The wait is over for the sport and all of us. Live from WRKC in Wilkes Barre, Pennsylvania, this is a very special edition of Flynn for the Win, Baseball Predictions, with John Flynn, Sean Grassi, and Bree DiMaggio. And a good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Flynn for the Win. I am WRKC Program Director John Flynn, and I have our friends Sean Grassi and Bree DiMaggio with us today. So, less than 72 hours away. You ready to go?
I am so ready. This is
exciting.
Best time of year.
Yes, yes, and obviously baseball, without a doubt, is my favorite sport to watch. 162 games, part of my daily fabric, and I'm just ready to go. And especially since I'm actually going to the Mets opening day with the Seven Line Army on Thursday, which is opening day, and I'm just ready to go. So I think we should get into some of the storylines that are going to shape up how the 2018 season is going to go, and we can take this like a bunch of different ways. But I think the first story I want to get across is like the emergence, or I should say the involvement of the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros are coming off their first World Championship in franchise history. They still have many of the pieces that won them a World Series title in place. So Sean, so can the Astros repeat? Do they have what it takes? So we have some solid competition with the Astros in the American League. So can the Astros repeat?
I think the Astros absolutely can repeat, especially considering they just only bolstered from what I saw, considering they signed a big ace to that rotation in Garrett Cole. They got him off of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and now that you have Garrett Cole, you've got Dallas Keuchel, you've got Justin Verlander, plus all the great offensive players that you have there of Carrera, Springer, Altuve. It's pretty easy to see, like, this is going to be the team that is your bar. This is your championship team, and they may start out slow in the beginning, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made it all the way back to the World Series this coming year. It's going to be hard to try to dethrone someone that is this well-rounded in terms of what they can easily do.
I feel like this team's always been an underdog team, but the past few years, and they've just come up as such a team to beat now, you know?
And I think you look at like how this team evolved. So and this was after the 2005 National League pennant winning team when the Houston Astros had Craig Biggio, Lance Berkman, and others. They had a stout 1-2 punch in Roger Clemens and Andy Pettitte when they were good. But the organization did not wait a couple of years too late to start selling, and they went into 3 straight 100 losing seasons, and then the march upward began with prospects like Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, George Springer, and others, and then a starting rotation now that's about as good as it gets. That compares to the likes of any team in baseball. And you also have to factor in their stunning trades of both Justin Verlander at the August trade deadline, and then in September. Not September, but during the offseason when they acquired Garrett Cole from the Pittsburgh Pirates.
And I think that's the one thing that's going to help this team be able to even elevate them and possibly go back-to-back repeats. Something that we haven't seen in terms of at least a team getting there since the Yankees or the Phillies, in terms of being able to get back there and possibly win it all constantly. Like, this is going to be a good young team. They were built the same way that the 2007 to 2011 Phillies were, in terms of it's going to be hard trying to dethrone them in the West. They've got the pieces. They're going to be there for a while. And they're a good young group that can easily learn from each other and just help bolster each other. If anything, this is the Cubs of the West, and it's going to be fun seeing how they interact with each other in terms of, okay, we've got one under our belt. We're not necessarily the underdogs now, but we're still hungry because we are that young. Because you look at the players that they got to see on their way out, such as Derek Jeter or Mariano Rivera with 5 world championships, you know that's their standard right now. That's their standard right there, is to try to win as many as those legends to get themselves cemented into being some of the best Astros ever in their history.
And they know now that they have the talent to get there, so not only are they hungry for that, but they know that they can reach it, which makes them even hungrier for it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the Astros, and even the emotional aspect of the Astros playoff run last year, because their run came 2 months after the devastating effects of Hurricane Harvey, and the way the team bonded after that, I think it made the Astros World Championship a lot sweeter.
Absolutely, considering you had the same effect as when New Orleans won the Super Bowl in 2009. It helped build the team around the city like it always should, considering it was a way for people to get away from what had happened in terms of the natural disaster, but it brought everyone together because it was able to just bring the city, enjoy this one moment in time, and be happy that we actually got to do it, considering it's both of their firsts. So it's absolutely fun. But looking on the other side of what is competition, in terms of the reigning World Series champion Houston Astros, you've got the Yankees, who we know have the all-time record for most championships, but they made a big move in the offseason in signing the Marlins slugger Giancarlo Stanton, and it's going to be a question of how far can Giancarlo Stanton take the Yankees, especially in terms of can he actually play an entire season?
Yeah, and I think when you factor in the difficulty of the feats that Giancarlo Stanton provided in his 8 years with the Marlins, and 6 of those years were in the new spacious ballpark, and he hit 59 home runs last year, and this is with the deepest, with one of the deepest outfields in all of baseball. That 59 home runs plus the amount of strength needed to hit all those home runs, especially for a ballpark like Miami's.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Giancarlo Stanton had an absolute season. But there's one thing that has always been that has plagued him in terms of his career. He's not played a full season. He's always gotten hurt with whatever injury it happens to be, whether it's a nagging hamstring or a nagging shoulder injury. And it's stuff that keeps him out of the lineup and keeps him, in terms from the team, not producing what they should be producing, considering, the Marlins were actually somewhat of a surprise, but when they didn't have Giancarlo Stanton, the team looked flat. He is the spark plug, and you could almost look to the Yankees as possibly maybe having the same effect, considering you sign that big of a player. If he's not in your lineup, that's kind of demoralizing.
But they might have signed him. On the other hand, they might have signed him knowing that they were going to have to give him the medical attention that he needed. So maybe they're going to try to keep him. Of course, they're going to try to keep him as healthy as possible so that hopefully he could play his first season, like a full season, They definitely have that game plan, because how do you know you're about to get an injured player and not think of that ahead of time?
And it brings into the question of what you do in terms of rotation, considering Stanton is a very good defensive player in terms of playing the outfield. You can't necessarily have all four players that are going to be your starting outfielders play at the same time in terms of the outfield. Do you try to switch out Brett Gardner a couple of games for terms of defense that Giancarlo can bring and stop some run support in terms of what other teams can get?
I feel like you wouldn't want to take out Brett Gardner. That's your best player. That's by far your best player. He's stolen the most bases. That's definitely not a player you want to take out of your lineup.
See, and also Brett Gardner is one of those players where other teams have to game plan around, because if Brett Gardner gets on base,
there's nothing's going to stop him.
That he can do so much that it takes the pitcher's attention away from hitters such as in this case is Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Gary Sanchez, and you have to deal with him and that lineup at the same time. Boy, watch out.
I mean, in the same instance, though, we know Giancarlo is not going to be put in center field.
Obviously,
it's either he's going to be put in left field where Brett Gardner is, or they're going to rotate between Judge and Stanton in terms of them playing right field and DH. But I think
if he's got the speed, they might want to put him in right field, because they can transition him to that player. If he's an athlete, then he should be able to transition to any positions.
Absolutely, but I mean, granted, I understand the speed game that you have with Brett Gardner, but in the same aspect, in terms of what you want to do in terms of limiting runs, we know in terms of the arms, your starting center fielder has a cannon, Aaron Judge has a cannon, and Giancarlo Stanton has a cannon. Brett Gardner doesn't necessarily have a cannon. He can easily cover the entire width of the field, but in the same aspect, if you can easily make the do-or-die throws and easily eliminate, I'm going to say maybe 15% of the runs that come towards his way in left field, that's helping win at least another 5-10 games in the season.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think moves like the Yankees have made with Giancarlo Stanton, Brandon Drury, and others. I think the attitude of the Yankees has changed dramatically over the past year, because because Sean and I were sitting here 52 weeks ago, and we were wondering, what Yankees team will we see? Will we see a Yankees team that's similar to like the fun team of '96, or is it going to be one of these teams where the question marks would plague them? And I think the building of this Yankees roster has a lot to do with Brian Cashman, the general manager. And I mean, guys, there's a reason Brian Cashman's been the GM for 20 years. And I think moves like this are what separates championship teams from the rest of the pack.
Granted, in terms of the last 20 years, that puts you at 98. That's what, 3 championships the Yankees won?
They won 3 in a row, 98, 99, 2000, and then again in 2009.
Yeah, okay, so 4 championships. That's very good, but I mean, in terms of how spaced out they are, it's not really spaced out, considering you had 2000 to 2009, and then from 2009 to now. That's a long time in terms of gaps, especially when you could easily have had a better turnaround in terms of the talent that the Yankees could have had building in the farm, which you look at the players that they are built on now, a lot of them are from the farm, and they are really good players.
But I think the thing that Sean's forgetting was that every year the Yankees are contenders, and it seems like every year that I think the haters want to praise the misses they had, like in 2001 when the Diamondbacks came back against Mariano Rivera in Game 7 of the World Series, or the years when Alex Rodriguez wasn't hitting in the postseason, derailing the Yankees' hopes back then. But all in all, this was the Yankee attitude that I grew up with in the early to mid 2000s. A team that's in contention year in and year out, and that's why I think it's time to watch out for the Yankees.
I think whether you're a Yankees fan or not, the Yankees are always a fun game to watch, you know? Like, you can always just sit down. They're always someone to fight against. They're always someone to, either you love them or you hate them. And I feel like the Yankees are one of those teams.
I mean, everyone I can...
But they're always relevant. They're always relevant.
Right. Everyone I can guarantee in America will sit down and watch a Red Sox-Yankees rivalry game on Sunday Night Baseball. I can guarantee that.
Yeah,
but I mean,
relevant.
In terms of what I am saying, you look at the amount of championships that were won with the homegrown players as opposed to the players that they have gotten from trades. It's not as favorable in terms of the last 20 years with Brian Cashman, considering, like I said, the legendary players that they have, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada, Derek Jeter. They have 5 world championships, Bernie Williams with 4. That's homegrown, as opposed to Alex Rodriguez or Kevin Youkilis or Chase Headley. They have gotten them, and Alex Rodriguez only has 1 ring. It's more about what you can do in terms of building the entire team, especially when you're being able to use your entire resources.
Yep, and we're going to get into more about Giancarlo Stanton and the Yankees in our predictions in a little bit. But I also want to turn my attention to how stagnant the free agent market was, because like this year was an abnormally slow off season for free agent signings, because like it took so long for players like Jake Arrieta or other players to sign huge contracts, and so how is this stagnant free agent market going to play a role into this season, guys?
I think it's going to provide some help for for teams that want to get that early burst in and try to sustain that burst. Considering if we look at who's on the list still, I think there's going to be a lot of names, like if major injuries start going down, teams that thought they could be out of the contention as early as maybe May or June are able to easily make the turnaround by picking someone up in the free agent market that we're calling stagnant. But in the same aspect, you look at who the teams have won that World Series or have been to the World Series. They've been building them through the draft picks. So it's not really a shock that the free agent market's slowly going down, as more looking at what's coming in terms of young, raw talent that you can easily farm and groom through your systems. It's not anything surprising, considering you look at our top teams that I'm saying the top teams for this year. You've got the Indians, who were built young and through the farm. You've got the Cubs, obviously built young and through the farm. The Dodgers have been building through their farm. The Astros built through their farm. That's, by this trend, you're looking at who's winning championships, and they're coming through the farm. It's no surprise that they're going to make deals when it's the trade deadline to try to give that extra push. But in terms of the consistent core, you got to build it through the farm, and that's what the trend has been of who's winning these championships.
And I also think that as much as because I follow the rosters occasionally, and like I've been feeling like the free agent market has been like so abnormally slow that I just don't even bother to look, because we don't know when players are going to sign. So I recently updated like a roster spreadsheet for myself, and like I've seen like how different or or the lack thereof, teams are different with free agency. So, but the most hyped move so far of this offseason for a new team, for a player joining the new team, has to be right now with Shohei Ohtani of the LA Angels of Anaheim. Ohtani, of course, coming over from Japan, so that he could serve as a power hitter and a power pitcher. So, but he did have a rocky spring. But now that the games count, and it's a fresh slate for him. Is Shohei Ohtani, Sean, is Shohei Ohtani of the Angels worth the hype?
I think he will be, but I'm not saying necessarily right now. Everyone may want to hype him as being the Rookie of the Year this year in terms of what he can do. He needs to get acclimated to the actual MLB first, considering what they play in Japan and what they play here is vastly different. Considering in terms of pitching numbers, he could probably easily absolutely dominate the pitching, considering it's been so hard trying to figure out how to pick up the ball from the pitching mechanics, considering Japanese pitchers tend to have a hitch in their step, and it throws MLB hitters off their game. But in terms of the hitting, I was watching in his spring training game against the Dodgers. He did not know how to handle Clayton Kershaw's curveball. Granted, no one really knows how to handle a curveball from Clayton Kershaw, but I mean, he didn't look like he had the hitting understanding of where he wants to hit off of these pitchers, and he's trying too much to actually pick up the ball and not necessarily react and be able to just swing fluently.
I mean, I think regardless, it'll be fun to watch him because it's such a different thing that the MLB is doing, so I think regardless, it'll be entertaining. But, I mean, something like that, just something like getting used to the pitching is an easy fix. It's not like he has to change all of his fundamentals. He just has to get the timing down. He has to sit there and watch a pitcher throw a ball 200 times in a row to see where to see how it's coming in, to know how to watch it. I mean, that's all it is. It's simple. It's simple things.
But I do think the biggest obstacle that Ohtani is going to face is having to pitch every fifth day, because we're in Japan. You get to you only pitch once a week, but you have to do it every fifth day. So the question is, will Ohtani handle short rest for his standards? Meanwhile, the 2018 season could be the last for Bryce Harper and the Washington Nationals, as the Nationals have probably one more year left of Bryce Harper before Harper hits free agency at the end of the year. So, guys, how real is the pressure on Bryce Harper and the Washington Nationals in 2018?
In terms of a contract year, not that much of a pressure for Bryce Harper, because we know what kind of athlete Bryce Harper is. In terms of the Nationals, it's very high pressure, considering this has been their golden cow, considering he has been the young prospect that we've seen back in Nevada when he was still in high school, winning the home run derbies out there, and he's coming to the end of his road in terms of being a National, considering unless the Nationals make a drastic turn and actually surprise everyone and win playoff games, they're going to lose Bryce Harper, and they're going to have to start imploding that system, considering from what I've seen in terms of this Washington franchise / Montreal, they have good players. They know how to find good players, but they can't build a team around it to win playoff games. That's why they lost Vladimir Guerrero. That's why they lost Pedro Martinez, and that's why they're going to lose Bryce Harper.
And I also think that you also have to factor in Daniel Murphy as well. You also have to factor in the depth around the lineup. But I think even if the Nationals win the World Series, I don't know if Bryce Harper will stay, whether or not they win the World Series.
Well, I mean, it's better being able to stay and say, hey, we did win a championship, than say, we never won anything, I'm going to go where there's a winner.
I mean, or he could even go out as, okay, well, it's not like this season is the deciding factor, so maybe he already has decided to leave. And if they win a World Series this year, he could say, okay, well, this is how I want to leave. Regardless, I don't think that he'll stay.
It just begs the question in terms of what will happen in the offseason next season, or in this coming year in terms of 2019, of where he'll want to go. Considering if you try to sign him in the Yankees, now you're just adding even another kink into trying to figure out what your rotation is anyway. So it begs the question of where the prime location would be for Bryce Harper to go.
Yeah, but I think Bryce Harper has the deck stacked for himself as he heads into free agency period. So we will run through the 15 teams of the American League. How well will they do? Will there be any surprises? Will there be any disappointments? Find out as the three of us make our American League predictions on Flynn for the Win here on 88.5 WRKC Radio Kings College.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I'd like to report a bear hug.
Uh-huh, okay.
Well, we were building a bonfire, and I saw some, dry brush and leaves around, so, I said to move the bonfire somewhere else, and out of nowhere, Smokey Bear shows up and hugs me.
So you noticed some wildfire hazards and moved your bonfire to a safer location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Smokey, all right. He likes it when people help prevent wildfires. It hits him close to home. Not everybody gets the hug, my friend. So that's pretty special to get a hug from Smokey Bear.
So it was him. Hey, guys, I told you it was Smokey.
Okay, well, congratulations, my friend. And thanks for calling. There are many ways to prevent a wildfire. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
Hey, Billy.
Yeah?
Do you want to go to the state fair?
Yeah.
Do you want to ride the roller coaster?
Yeah.
The big one?
Yeah.
The one with the reverse flip?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it, including going to the state fair.
Oh, man.
Cheer up. This year, your parents will make it right. They're going to visit EnergySavers.gov, where they'll get tips on how to save energy and money. Then they'll add extra insulation and get a few of those Energy Star appliances. They could save hundreds of dollars a year. And you know what, Billy?
What?
They'll take you to the state fair next year.
But I want to go this year.
I know you do, Billy. I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Flynn for the Win on 88.5 WRKC, Wilkes-Barre.
And we are back on Flynn for the Win on 88.5 WRKC Radio Kings College for our 2018 Major League Baseball prediction special. So now we will run through each of the three divisions in the American League, the East, the Central, and the West. So we'll start with the AL East. So can anyone catch the Yankees in the AL East?
I think it's going to be a close race between the Yankees and the Red Sox. Considering I'm looking at how both of these teams are matched up in terms of how they fit together, in terms of when you look at how the lineups are going to play out against each other. It's kind of like trying to figure out who wins the National League West between the Dodgers and the Giants, considering both teams have very good young players that are absolutely just blowing up the Major League world, that we're excited to watch these games even if we're not the particular fan bases, just because of looking at the young talent. It kind of gives us shades of when Griffey was young and just revolutionized baseball. Now we have even so many more young guys just making their impact into the game. That's fun watching anybody's game, whether it's Cubs game, whether it's the Red Sox game, whether it's the Yankees game, whether it's the Phillies game, the Astros game. It doesn't matter. There's so much good young talent that's fun looking at. I think the Yankees, in terms of when it gets to summer weather, they have the more favorable ballpark to hit the home runs, that they have built this dangerous Murderers Row 2.0 lineup of theirs, that it's going to provide more of a challenge to be able to see what the Red Sox pitching could try to do when it comes to the dog days of summer, and try to keep the ball down and in the ballpark, as opposed to what the hitters can do when it's cold weather games, such as like early May, all of April and October, and later September.
Yeah, so I actually have the Yankees winning 100 games of the season, winning the AL East, and then the Red Sox finishing 92 wins, and they'll pick up the first wild card. But I also want to look at the rest of the division, like the Blue Jays made some interesting moves, bolstering the bullpen. The Orioles are trying to squeeze in one last playoff run with Manny Machado, and then the Rays, who just had a fire sale toward the end of the offseason.
Yeah, the Rays, I'm surprised that they did a fire sale considering how early it was. They didn't even give anyone pretty much work. They just said, all right, we didn't do anything with this team. We're going to let the young guys that we have in the system come up, and we're going to let everyone go. Considering they let go probably the one guy from their World Series run that no one thought he was going to leave the team, considering he is that kind of a guy, in Evan Longoria. And now he's hanging out with the Giants with Andrew McCutchen and Buster Posey and Madison Bumgarner, which that in itself is a scary kind of team when you look at the quality of star power. But, I mean, it's surprising what the Rays did in terms of blowing it up and letting the young guys come up and prove themselves.
Yeah, and so for the AL East, so the rest of the win-loss totals, I have the Blue Jays winning 83 games, the Orioles winning 77, and the Rays winning 72, finishing 5th in the American League East.
I'm looking at the Yankees probably win. I think it's going to be a closer race than that 8-win gap you've got between the Yankees and Red Sox. I wouldn't be surprised if the Yankees won 96 and Boston won 94 games, and then you have Baltimore come in 4th place at around 70 to 75 games won. I think the Blue Jays will end up being a 500 team. And then Tampa Bay, I'm thinking they win 60 games just to be generous. They'll probably be close around to the 100-loss record.
Yeah, the reason why I have the Red Sox winning a couple of games fewer than you is because my concern is about the Red Sox pitching. Now again, the Red Sox, yes, they did bolster their lineup by getting their DH of the future in J.D. Martinez. But, so you already have Drew Pomeranz on the disabled list. You have Tyler Thornburg, who's hurt. That's a hit to the bullpen. You have to wonder how Carson Smith will recover from Tommy John surgery. I think the Red Sox have way more issues, I think, than the Yankees do.
I think it's going to be more in terms of what you can actually provide. Considering we've seen where teams have gotten hot in April, it doesn't always translate well to when it gets hot in August, in September. But I think in terms of what Boston can do, I think the injuries setting them back a little bit, I think they'll help them get ready quicker and have them be ready for when it's actual game time in the quality times a game of June, July, in the playoff rush of August and September. Considering that's the time that everyone needs to actually focus and be on their game. April and May are kind of when you're trying to figure out what you need to do, get your stride going, and then June and July, you either get a good rise or you're starting to rise, and then August, September, you have to turn it on for playoffs, and that's when you get great quality baseball no matter where you look.
Yep, and all across the board. So now we turn our attention now to the American League Central, where it's headed, Sean, by the Cleveland Indians, who won 102 games last year.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at this division, I'm looking at 2 clear winners that could easily come out of here. It's going to be a question of what they will try to do against possibly the Angels of the West, but I'm saying two teams coming out of the Central. And I like Boston and New York coming out of the East. It's going to be more the dark horse coming out of the West division as far as I can tell, considering I'm looking at the Twins getting over the battle and winning the battle this year over the Indians, but it's going to be even closer than the Red Sox-Yankees one. I'm saying it's going to be 93 wins and 92 wins, respectively, where the Twins take the crown and the Indians get in as the second wild card spot.
And there is no doubt that the Twins took advantage of that stagnant free agent market by adding guys like Jake Odorizzi and Lance Lynn and Addison Reed and others. But But looking at the rest of the division, the White Sox are a team that could all of a sudden be on the rise with their fantastic farm system.
They could be on the rise, but at the same time, we have to see what the young guys can do in the majors, considering, yeah, we have a lot of great young guys that are ready for the majors. They're in their early to mid-20s already playing major league games. But not everyone in the minor leagues in the farm system is already groomed to do that. It's going to be more of a question of what can they do when they actually get to see consistent major league pitching, considering that's the main difference when you look at it, considering it's a lot harder to try to figure out what you need to do when you're in the minor leagues, trying to make sure that you win games in a much smaller crowd of when a sellout's 10,000 people, as opposed to when not even a sellout, a slow day is 20,000 people in a ballpark in the major leagues. That's twice the pressure that you have a lot of people watching you. It's going to be a long road for anyone that's going to be transitioning. I don't see the White Sox doing that well. I think they're going to be slightly better than Tampa Bay when Tampa Bay did their fire sale, but I'm saying they're maybe 65 to 67 wins this season.
Yeah, so my rundown through the AL Central, the Indians win 94 games, the Twins win 85, the White Sox win 71, the Tigers 67, and the Kansas City Royals, well, we haven't talked about them yet, so they're losing Eric Hosmer and Lorenzo Cain and others to free agency. I have the Royals finishing in last place in the AL Central.
I'm still saying Chicago, I think, is my last place team at 65, 67 wins. I'm saying the Tigers are still a little bit out there. They're going to finish in fourth around the 70 to 73 mark. I think the Royals aren't that far above them. They win 75 to maybe 77 games. And then the Indians and the Twins are your clear winners, as they'll take the top billings in the 90-plus category as 92 and 93. And speaking of the last division in the American League, we've got the AL West, which has our reigning World Series champions in it, and which I'm going to be looking at in terms of what's going to be expected in terms of the reigning champs, considering we look at teams of obviously Mike Trout and the Angels. We look at the Mariners up in Seattle that are trying to build a consistent franchise, and we've got the Rangers that are trying to make moves to bolster their team and try to get their first ever world championship. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the West, considering that's where my dark horse, if they upstart one of the teams in the wild card, it's coming out of the West. And I think more often than not, I think it's going to be Mike Trout's team in the Angels being able to go over the top and give Albert Pujols one last run in the playoffs. But it could be one of those seasons where they'll just barely fizzle out towards the end, because we've seen that from Angel teams prior, where they have done very well in certain months, but they haven't done it consistently enough to get them back into the playoffs every year.
Yeah, and I have my win projections for the AL West too. So I have the Astros winning 98 games, the Angels winning 84 games, the Mariners finishing with 81 wins, that put them at 500, the A's at 72, and the Texas Rangers finished last at 67 wins.
I'm saying the A's are going to finish at 62 wins. The Rangers are going to finish around the 76-79 win mark. The Mariners I think are going to be above 500. I'm thinking maybe an 84 win team. The Angels will be an 87 to 90 win team, and I agree with you on that number. I think the Astros have enough to easily be a 98 win team and be able to clinch the top spot.
So any objections? Any objections, guys?
No, I think you guys sound pretty good.
Yeah, I like, honestly.
I agree with basically everything, you know.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think the American League, I think, is basically a struggle between the haves and the have-nots.
Exactly. Considering we've seen a lot of the potential in terms of the star power in the AL, but I think in terms of when it comes to predictions, I think our next segment, when we get past the break in terms of the National League, that's where things get a lot more screwy and a lot harder to try to predict, especially when you have teams where they could be on the rise like the Brewers, or teams that are consistently good and they battle each other out like the Giants and Dodgers.
And I think there's no doubt we're gonna have some. We're probably, because I haven't seen Sean's annual predictions yet, but I have a feeling we're gonna have some interesting comparisons when we come back here on Flynn for the Win on 88.5 WRKC Wilkes Barre. We'll be back in just a minute, folks.
Is my kid in the right car seat? I guess she is.
There are probably rules on when to move up to a booster seat, aren't there?
Rear-facing, forward-facing. I think I have it right.
Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Don't think you know. Know you know. Go to safercar.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
They'll challenge your authority because that's what kids do. But this car is your territory. And in here, your word is law. So when you say you won't move until everyone's buckled up, you won't budge an inch until you hear that click. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. For more information, visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup.
We now return to Flynn for the Win on 88.5 WRKC Wilkes Barre.
And welcome back to Flynn for the Win here on 88.5 WRKC Wilkes Barre, as we're now getting to look at the National League, where John and my favorite teams happen to lie in the same division, in the NL East, and might as well start in our favorite division as we go down and break down what is it going to take in terms of whether it's a surprise run from your New York Mets, John, or my Philadelphia upcoming Phillies to try to dethrone Bryce Harper, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, Gio Gonzalez, and the Nationals.
I think what's going to come down to is that for either team to make the playoffs, I think a lot of it has to do, well, for the Mets it has to do with staying healthy, and I think for the Phillies is what about their hitting? Because I think the biggest concerns with the Phillies I have to do with the depth or the lack thereof in the Phillies lineup. Because, granted, the Phillies solved a lot of pitching issues when they got Jake Arrieta in free agency. But I think with the Mets, I think all it is staying healthy. Because, I mean, you have as good a 1-2 punch in the starting rotation as you have anywhere with Noah Syndergaard, Jacob deGrom. But then the rest of the rotation seems to me like question marks.
Yeah, it's going to be a wonder of what's going to happen, especially when you have DeGrom and Syndergaard be able to be healthy, considering, like you said, and they are one of the young stars that we have in this game that are fun to watch no matter whose team you are. It's just more of, for me, it's a little bit of a dread of like, ugh, great. It's kind of like how Giancarlo Stanton was last year. Great, we have to pitch to him. Great, we have to try to hit against these two guys. But, I mean, that's the one thing that, yes, your Mets have to do. But in terms of me, I'm looking again to what I looked at last year and what definitely brought the Phillies down last year. We need a consistent bullpen presence. Like, I'm glad that we got Arrieta. I like that we got Carlos Santana. Those are two good veteran players that are going to help these young guys that have come through the farm be able to develop and understand how to play in the major league level and sustain that incredible spark. Considering Vince Velasquez is one of my favorite pitchers, that's a young guy, and Aaron Nola is absolutely phenomenal watching him. He's got shades of Cole Hamels to me in terms of being able to, what pitch selection he has, what pitch command he has. He reminds me of a Cole Hamels when he was back here in Scranton, Wilkes Barre, and it was fun watching Cole back then. But, I mean, it's going to come down to the bullpen because there's not really any leaders in that bullpen. There's no veterans in that bullpen. It's going to be guys coming up from the minor leagues, and if not free agency, that it's going to be a lot more questions of what's going to happen. Your eldest player in the bullpen is, I think, 26, and Hector Neris. Other than that, there's not that many people that are going to be over 25 in this bullpen, if that. And it's just going to be one of those questions of how they're going to handle coming into the major league level and being able to face hitters like Bryce Harper, Yoenis Cespedes, when we get out west. So I think the bullpen play, and I think how the play on the road is going to matter, considering the Phillies play pretty well when it gets to home because they have one of the best fan bases in terms of baseball, but they're not afraid to let you know when they are not happy with you, considering we can easily look at J.D. Drew in terms of what he did in terms of going to the Atlanta Braves instead of being signed by the Phillies as a draft pick. So I think in terms of it, it's going to be how you play on the road, especially when you're in hostile territories, and it's how your bullpen's going to be reacting.
So, and you said about Hector Neris. Neris is 28. You're also forgetting about Pat Neshek. He's 37.
Oh, we brought Neshek back.
Yes, we did.
I'm surprised by that, considering that is a little bit of a shocking scenario on that, considering I know we traded him away, and I wasn't expecting him to come back, considering he is, 40?
He's going to turn 38 in about 6 months.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I'm going to be a little concerned about, considering the Phillies did just they signed over in the spring training, but also have now released in terms of Francisco Rodriguez, which could have been a veteran role to at least help the young guys, but he wasn't performing like what we need him to do in terms of being the catalyst K-Rod like he was. But I think in terms of the standings, the Nationals, in terms of their pitching rotation and their lineup, are still the team to beat. I think they win 92 games this year. I think the Phillies, I think they're going to be a surprise. I think they're going to win 86 to 88, putting them in a possible wild card contention. I think the Mets are right around that same area of 84 to 87, depending on health. If they are going to be consistently healthy, that might get bumped up during the season. But if they get more injuries and can't sustain the injuries, or overcome the injuries, I should say, it's going to drop the number. And then I think for the rest of the division, it's going to be the Braves, who are trying to rebuild what they have in their farm system and try to make sure that they can actually put a product in their now 2-year-olds, or this is their second season in their new stadium, and try to bring in the fans into Cobb County and try to give Chipper Jones something to look forward to as he's going into the Hall of Fame this year. And then the Marlins, who just had an entire fire sale prior in terms of no Christian Yelich, no Giancarlo Stanton. It's going to be a rocky road to try to figure out what this Marlins team can do now that they don't have a catalyst such as Giancarlo Stanton, considering they looked flat last year when it was Giancarlo Stanton. But I do like Bohr, the first baseman for the Marlins. He's going to be an absolute powerhouse stud.
So, but my question for the Marlins is Justin Bohr actually the best player on the 2018 Miami Marlins?
Well, I mean, in terms of what he did in terms of home runs, in terms of what he was able to do, being the second power bat, I liked what he was doing.
But I'm not. But that's not the point about that. But my point is, can the Marlins hit as a team? I don't know. Because I don't know if Justin Bohr is the answer. I want to know the question. So with that, the National League East, my standings, I have the Nationals winning 96 games. I have the Mets finishing in second with 81 wins. The Phillies finishing in third with 80 wins. The Braves finishing fourth with 78 wins. And the Marlins finishing fifth with 64 wins. And yes, I am being generous with the 64 wins.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard sledding uphill for Miami. But I do understand the moves of why they had to make them to try to get out of debt.
But the Marlins don't. Not only do the Marlins have an underwhelming team in the majors, they don't have an overwhelming farm system either.
No, they've never been really the one for the farm system. It's been surprising to see what players do come out of Miami. But looking at the next division in the NL Central, this should be a fun one, especially to seeing what moves the Milwaukee Brewers have made, bringing in Lorenzo Cain and bringing in Christian Yelich. It's going to be interesting to see how those two, plus Ryan Braun, play together, plus all the other great pieces that they have out in Milwaukee, and see if Milwaukee can try to turn an upstir into what looks to be the Chicago dynasty of earning the crown. Considering I'm still saying Chicago is where you look for your benchmark, considering they got a little bit disappointed last year being knocked out of the playoffs and not being able to go back to the World Series, and I think that's put the hunger back into the Chicago Cubs to try to win yet another World Series, considering it's going to be fun seeing the Cubs play against the Brewers, considering the NL Central has always got bad blood no matter which teams you're looking at, whether it's Cubs-Cardinals, Cardinals-Reds, Pirates-Cardinals, Pirates-Reds, Brewers, and anyone in the Central. They don't like each other. They get competitive, and it's always fun seeing who plays against who and see what tempers may stir up or see what fires get lit in terms of trying to win the game.
Yeah, Sam, but I look at this division like I did with all the American League divisions. It's like a difference between the haves and the have-nots. The Cubs have a Chris Bryant. The Cubs have an Anthony Rizzo. So, but I just don't. But my issue with the Brewers is that they don't have that elite bat that the Cubs and Cardinals possess. Then the Cardinals are with Marcell Ozuna, but I just don't think the Brewers are as good as the Cardinals or the Cubs in the division. So that's why when I look at my projected standings, I have the Cubs winning 91 games and winning the Central, the Cardinals at 84 wins, the Brewers at 83 wins, the Cincinnati Reds, I have them at 76 wins, and the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are no longer with Andrew McCutchen or Garrett Cole, I have them at 68 wins.
I'm seeing the Pirates come in 4th place. I'm seeing the Reds come in 5th because, honestly, I love Billy Hamilton, but I think Billy Hamilton will be one of those hot commodities that will be picked up at the trade deadline for speed and absolute threat on the bases.
And for the 76 wins instead of the 66 wins, 2 words, Joey Votto.
Yeah. I mean, everyone wants Joey Votto, but I mean, it's going to be the question of does he actually decide to leave or does he want to actually just play and be a career-long Red? That's going to be the question in terms of what Votto would do, but I think people are going to be at the trade deadline going after Billy Hamilton, considering we know speed kills, and he's the fastest player besides D. Gordon that can easily run around the bases and cause havoc and make your head spin. But I'm looking at the Reds being a 5th-place team, winning 65 games. The Pirates, I'm saying they win 70 because they tend to play well against their Central Division, so their records seem to balance out, but once they get out of their own division, their fire kind of loses their spark, and they don't always play at their top level. The St. Louis Cardinals are going to take 3rd place as they'll come in around the 500 mark. I think 81 games is fair, considering they don't have Lance Lynn. They're still trying to figure out how to build the team, considering it's not been consistently good since their last World Championship in 2011. And I'm looking at the Brewers as overtaking and being a surprise to the Cardinals as they win 87 games, and I think the Cubs win 93, 94 games this season and take the top spot in the Central, considering I'm thinking a lot of wins are going to come out of the West Division, considering this is where a lot of teams are going to be coming out of in terms of that's going to be competitive, considering I have no idea what is going to turn out of who's going to overtake who in the West other than what we are going to look at, considering it's what's on the menu next as we look at the NL West division, considering we have the NL pennant champion LA Dodgers, who have a fantastic young roster, a revamped San Francisco Giants roster, who are looking to possibly bring in their 4th championship in the 2010s decade. And you've got a young up-and-coming Diamondbacks and Rockies teams, and a Padres team that's trying to make moves and be explosive and be a very dark horse coming out of the division. To be personally honest, it's going to be hard trying to beat the standard of what the LA Dodgers are, considering the LA Dodgers have a fantastic rotation. They have a fantastic bullpen. They have a good young core guys that easily play with each other well and know how to play with each other. And they know how to hit. They hit crazy. They have a great defense, and it's going to be hard trying to figure out what happens in terms of the West, considering, I don't know about you, John, but I'm looking at the Dodgers winning first place for the West, with the Giants maybe a game behind them, and then maybe two, 3 games behind them is going to be the Diamondbacks and Rockies. Well, the Padres are going to be maybe around the 75 mark.
Yeah, and so my numbers for the West, and I'm reading from so what I wrote in the Crown, our school newspaper, this week. So I have the Dodgers at 97 wins. I have the Giants at 87 wins, picking up the first wild card because I think with the moves the Giants made, getting McCutchen, getting Longoria. So, but even though the Giants are hurt a little bit because with the news about Madison Bumgarner missing 6 to 8 weeks with an injury, but I don't think it'll take away from the fact that Bruce Bochy is still there, that the core players is still there, and I think the Giants are going to find their way to the playoffs, and I think Bruce Bochy is going to have a great year managing. I have the Rockies winning 84 games this season. I have Arizona at 81 wins. A big downturn. Don't tell me, but I just like what directions the other 3 teams are going. But I have the Padres, Sean, at 77 wins, which is a marked improvement from last year, and I think it has to do with what I thought was the best free agent signing of this offseason, in my view, Eric Hosmer.
Yeah, I do like the signing, considering they are trying to build the team. But I mean, they're already in a hard division when you look at who's already being young, who's already being very talented and putting in hard games to play. Considering it's hard to look at, considering I'm looking at Dodgers cracking 90 at the exact 90 mark, and the Giants winning 89 games. And then have the Diamondbacks and the Rockies tying in third place at 86 wins. And I think the Padres win, like I said, 75 games. But, I mean, that's a tight race always in the West, considering it's wild, it's wacky, and it's very competitive because they just want to be the top dog.
And, I mean, did anyone expect either Arizona or Colorado to play in the wild card game last year?
No, absolutely not.
I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't expect them to play in the wild card game, and we see absolutely young, great guys, considering the Rockies kept Carlos Gonzalez out in the outfield. They've got the absolute, I think he's better than Manny Machado in terms of what he can do and what he does for that Rockies team. And Nolan Arenado, he's an absolute stud. He can play the game. He's got the heart. He's got the mentality. He's not outspoken, considering you don't hear anything out of his mouth in terms of what's going on out off the field or off the diamond. He is absolutely the player that every franchise loves having in terms of he's got the heart, he's got the skill, and he's got the maturity level to easily build a team around.
Yep, and coming up next on the big program, we unveil our awards and World Series predictions, one of my favorite moments of the year, on Flynn for the Win, on 88.5 WRKC, Radio Kings College.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. Waking up every day, lifting him from the bed to the wheelchair to the car to get him to therapy on time, it's no small task between the doctors and the diagnosis, but nothing can disable this love. This is my big brother, my hero. He's part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. See, there's no time for tired. This starts again tomorrow. He'll be waiting for me. I wake up for him. I know he needs me. But I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community, or call 877-333-5885. Caregiving Resource Center, Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Flynn for the Win on 88.5 WRKC, Wilkes-Barre.
Welcome back, everyone, to Flynn for the Win. Now it's time to take a look at things that happened in the past on this date in sports. On this date in sports history, March 26th, 1917, the Seattle Metropolitans become the first American team to win ice hockey's Stanley Cup, taking down the Montreal Canadiens 3-1 with a 9-1 victory over Montreal in Seattle. The National Hockey Association folds after the season, and it wouldn't be until 1928 when the New York Rangers become the first American NHL team to win the Stanley Cup. Today in 1973, in one of the greatest performances in sports history, in the college basketball national championship game, Bill Walton scored 44 points and only missed one shot as his UCL Bruins won their 7th consecutive national title, taking down Memphis State 87-66. Walton then became the top pick in the 1974 draft and led the Portland Trail Blazers to an NBA title in 1977. He then helped the Celtics take a title in 1986. In 1992, boxer Mike Tyson was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his rape of Danielle Washington. In 1996, as part of voting in the U.S. presidential election primaries, voters in San Francisco voted 2-1 to give the Giants a new stadium that would open in the year 2000. That stadium is now AT&T Park. And on this date in 1979, in a precursor of things to come in basketball in the 1980s, Michigan State, led by Magic Johnson, defeated Larry Bird and Indiana State 75-64 in the national championship game. Magic scores 24, while Bird scores 19. The two future NBA Hall of Famers would meet 3 times in the NBA Finals in the 1980s, and combine for 8 NBA titles, 6 league MVPs, and be part in one of the greatest rivalries involving 2 different players in sports history. And that's Today in Sports History for March 26th.
And we are back here on 88.5 WRKC. We're going to wrap things up in just a little bit, but we have some awards to hand out. Our preseason predictions for awards. So Sean, I'm going to start with the rookies of the year. So you can take it either way. So who will be the 2 rookies of the year?
In terms of the AL, I'm looking to the Yankees, considering they have been doing very well in actually looking to their farm for the future and actually building their team around it. I think Gleyber Torres is going to be the American League Rookie of the Year, considering I think he's going to do much better not having so much pressure, but be able to develop himself and be an absolute fundamental piece that the Yankees will need in terms of building the team for the 2020s and possibly into the 2030s. And I think in terms of the National League, I think it's going to come out of Atlanta. In Ronald Acuna, I think he is going to be something that the Braves will look to and possibly build a team around to try to make a kind of a Chipper Jones-esque appearance of build the team around him, considering the last Rookie of the Year that they had in Atlanta was Chipper Jones, and they won a World Series with him.
Yeah, and I think you can go a few different ways. So with the National League, because I look at potential candidates like Scott Kingery and J.P. Crawford coming out of the Phillies. But yes, I do agree with you, Sean. I like Ronald Acuna coming out of the Braves. Like his talent, so that his contact bat, his speed, he's just gonna drive pitchers crazy in Cobb County this season, and we also agree on the American League Rookie of the Year, in which I have Gleyber Torres as well. So now let's turn our attention to the Cy Young. So there are like lots of good candidates in both leagues. So I want to start with you, Sean. Like the AL Cy Young, who do you see coming out of that?
I'm seeing someone that's gonna need. There's absolutely been wanting run support, considering the Pirates the last couple of years have been on the downhill, and now that he's in a different team with a much better lineup that easily produces no matter what day it is, I think your AL MVP is going to be Garrett Cole.
As you mean the Cy Young?
Or Cy Young, yeah. I think Cy Young is definitely going to be Garrett Cole, because Garrett Cole is definitely going to appreciate having this kind of a lineup to work behind and be able to just pitch and absolutely shut down hitters in the American League.
And Garrett Cole is actually an unconventional pick for Cy Young, but you nailed it on the head, Sean. Where he's coming over from a team that has from a National League team to an American League team, lots of support behind him, and I think it will allow Garrett Cole to pitch his Garrett Cole game. We both have Garrett Cole winning the American League Cy Young, but now how about the National League Cy Young? Who do you have coming out of there, Sean?
It's a hard test considering I love the rivalry between these two players, but I think in terms of what's going to happen, especially considering what the competitors these two guys are, I think we're going to have Madison Bumgarner go over Clayton Kershaw for the National League Cy Young winner. And I mean, granted, he is going to be injured for April and part of May, but I mean, if there's anything that scares any hitting lineup in the National League that is facing Madison Bumgarner or Clayton Kershaw, and I mean Madison Bumgarner, now that they've gotten the team together and have built more pieces to try to help him in terms of getting him run support again, I think it's definitely going to be one of those years where Madison Bumgarner wins the Cy Young and takes the Giants into the postseason and try to make some magic with that team.
Yeah, and there are a whole different variety of avenues, but I'm going to go with. But because I mentioned to Sean before the break that that I was going to pick a dark horse candidate for the National League Cy Young, and who else better to be for my pick for National League Cy Young, Sean? Jose Quintana. Jose Quintana of the Chicago Cubs taking home the National League Cy Young, because all the attention has been on John Lester and Yu Darvish, but the way Jose Quintana came of age of himself 2 years ago with the White Sox, having that marvelous first half, he was considered to be like the All-Star game starting pitcher for the American League at one point, and then he got dealt over to the Cubs in the midseason trade, a trade the Cubs had to make. But I think given his experience facing tough lineups, I think Jose Quintana comes of age and wins the National League Cy Young.
That is a bit of a dark horse, and that's a surprising one considering I thought you were going to go with you, but I do like Quintana. That is a great pick. But now we get into the granddaddy in terms of the trophies in the MVP award. And starting with the American League, I'm saying the American League is coming from a little bit closer to town in terms of where he's from, not necessarily where he plays. I'm thinking Mike Trout wins the American League MVP and wins his fourth?
So he has two right now.
So it'd be his third.
If he wins, it'll be his third.
I think he wins his third because he's absolutely a baller and knows how to play. No matter what kind of team is behind him, he just absolutely is the most valuable player to the team and to the league, honestly.
Yeah, and I look at the sabermetrics, and the sabermetrics favor Trout for everybody, and it does because I'm being objective here. Mike Trout is the best player in the game. There is no question about it. Mike Trout is the single. I'll say this again. Mike Trout is the single best player in Major League Baseball right now.
Absolutely, considering he's got all the tools. He's got the speed. He's got the glove. He's got the arm. He's got the bat. He's got the focus. He's got the maturity, and he loves playing the game. What more could you ask from a player, especially one that's a franchise player?
Yep. So now the National League side, my pick for National League MVP is Nolan Arenado of the Colorado Rockies. That Arenado has missed out in each of the last several years because of tremendous performances, but I think so with the presence Nolan Arenado has on the Rockies lineup, I think his presence in the lineup and also on the field is as vast as any player in the National League.
And I'm going to go with his opposite number in Chicago. I'm going with Chris Bryant as the National League MVP, considering after missing the World Series this past season where the Astros won, I think him and Anthony Rizzo, but definitely in terms of Chris Bryant, I think he's going to definitely carry the team through his defense, through his offense, and through his leadership ability to get Chicago to what I think is possibly another World Series run.
Yep. So now we put our crystal balls in. We zoom in to 7 months from now. Who is playing in the World Series and who will win the 2018 World Series? Sean, take your pick.
Well, I'm looking at it's a hard one considering in terms of who I have for division winners and possible wildcard winners. It's hard in terms of who's going to win the matchups, looking at so far down the line of half a year away. But at the same time, it's going to be fun. I have a fun one in store. Just as 2016 was a fun one, or even 2017 was a fun one, I say it goes to full 7. I say the Astros get back, and I say the Cubs get in. You have 2 of the last winners go at it for a World Series. The Cubs win it in 7.
Yeah, it's so Sean's taking the Astros over the Cubs. So because the last 7 or 8 years have featured different American League pennant winning teams ever since the Rangers went back to back in 2010 and 2011. I think that trend's going to continue. Give me the Yankees over the Cubs in the World Series.
How many games, John?
I'm gonna say right now I'll say them in 6.
Ooh, 6. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
that's respectable, and I think Bree enjoys that pick.
Yeah. Because I think this goes back to that the Yankees make moves other teams aren't willing to make, and that's why the Yankees stick out over the top.
Well, like I said, in terms of the trend, it's build it through the franchise, and who better to have in the World Series than the 2 teams that have recently won the World Series because they have a fantastic farm system and a fantastic core set of players and stable amount of teams.
And also an interesting tidbit about the Yankees and the Cubs in the World Series. That the 2 teams have played 8 games against each other. The Yankees have won them all.
Wow.
1932, the 4-game sweep, the one that featured Babe Ruth's called shot, and then 1938, Lou Gehrig's last World Series.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. But, I mean, that tells you how much time has passed between the Cubs and the Yankees in terms of seeing them each other in the World Series. It's almost as when the Phillies and the Yankees met in 2009's World Series, and we didn't see them prior since 1950.
Yeah, and this is also in the years that I've picked that I've been doing baseball predictions. This is the first one where I've picked a previous World Series matchup. So again, the Yankees over the Cubs in the World Series. Now, that's going to do it for this edition of Flynn for the Win. We will be on the air next week, even though it's the day after Easter and students will be coming back. We will be on the air next week, so you don't want to miss us next week, as we'll recap opening weekend and all of that stuff. So, for Flynn for the Win, I am John Flynn.
I'm Bree DiMaggio.
And I'm Sean Grassi. Stay safe, Wilkes Barre.
Thank you for listening to Flynn for the Win on 88.5 WRKC, Wilkes Barre.